Welcome, beautiful friends, to another full moon. The 29th of January 2021 gives us the Leo full moon. It's a very powerful moon and it begins another powerful week of astrology. And hopefully this little forecast will give you an idea of how to harness these energies to the most powerful effect in your life. Before I begin, I want to send my big respect to all First Nations people who might be tuning in today, and a special respect and gratitude to Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. I'm speaking to you from their lands, stolen and unceded. Big respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. Okay, so the full moon in Leo. I might share the chart just to give you an idea of what it looks like. I'm recording this on the day of the full moon and it's pouring with rain, so forgive the sounds, the beautiful sounds of rain on the roof. And we can see that the moon is sitting over there in Leo all by herself. The moon represents the child, the artist, the performer, and she is literally performing to all of those planets in Aquarius and Capricorn. And Aquarius is considered to be the audience. They're also the planets that are building towards the future. So you can see there's an enormous amount of emphasis in that area of the chart that's calling us to be responsible, to build, to envision a better future. The moon is our emotional life, our emotional selves, our relationship to people and others and the circumstances of our lives. So she is doing a lot of work right now. We can also see here the T-square that's being made between the moon in Leo, Mars and Uranus in Taurus, and Saturn and the Sun and Jupiter in Aquarius. And you can see that this is a very strong aspect. Look at all of those lines. This is where the tension is being intensely built this week and in coming weeks, as we are building up to the main signature of 2021, which is really about transforming the way we do things and moving from the old into the new. Moon in Leo, which is a fixed sign, we have the Sun conjunct Jupiter at 9 degrees. The full moon is at 9 degrees. The Sun is conjunct Jupiter, which is expanding the power and the illumination that the Sun brings to events and to illuminating issues that the moon is representing. And both the Sun and Jupiter and the moon in Leo are making a T-square to the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, another fixed sign. Aquarius, which is where the Sun and Jupiter is also a fixed sign. So this is really strong energy that wants to persist in the direction that it's going. It brings up certain kind of resistances and a reluctance to change. But with Mars and Uranus in Taurus, there's this tension, can be quite volatile, and we're seeing that play out in the world around us, in the Netherlands and in some other places, and potentially in our own lives. This kind of rebellious, angry, volatile energy that involves shocks and disruptions and potentially even accidents. I had a fall yesterday when I was rushing to the college where I teach, carrying a whole lot of stuff and not paying attention to the curb, and that was a very Mars-Uranus moment, and it forced me to realize that I need to slow down. So the things that are kind of throwing up unexpected events in our lives are really trying to bring us messages, and it can be very tense, and there's also a feeling of overwhelm in this moon and in the coming week, because we have the Aquarian house absolutely jam-packed with planets. We have Pluto and Venus in the later degrees of Capricorn, 25 degrees conjunct. This is really powerful for a number of reasons, and we'll touch on it. But basically those two houses next to each other are where almost all the planets are in the zodiac. And then we have this lonely little moon, the Leo moon, on the other side, and she is facing all of this power and all of this intensity in Aquarius and Capricorn. Leo is the sign of the child. It's the sign of the artist, the performer. It also represents royalty and leadership in the world. Leo wants to express itself exuberantly. Leo wants to be seen and heard. There's a beautiful spirit of play and pleasure in Leo. There's also the need to really follow our hearts. Leo represents the heart. So there's some pressure on that because she is all alone over there in Leo, and there's so much emphasis in the Aquarian house, which is wanting us to serve, to do, to be responsible, to we're being pulled to direct our energies into situations and experiences in which our responsibility is required for the betterment of the whole. And that can feel so overwhelming at times, and this week it most likely is. The moon is also trine Chiron and sextile Saturn. There is this creative potential for healing through the intensity and the tension that is arising in this T-square. And that there's also something very productive that can be built through it. Aquarius is building for the future. We are all working really hard on the things that we know have to be developed for this year. With the Leo full moon, there is an emphasis on taking care of our emotional well-being as individuals so that we can actually bring forth what it is that we have to offer in the context that we're working within to the fullest of our ability. So astrology is all about cycles, and there are constantly new cycles emerging, and each one has its own kind of theme. They're all interconnected. It's a web like our lives are, but there are a couple of interesting cycles being initiated or being continued with this full moon. If you keep a journal, look back over August around the week of the 18th to see what was coming up for you, because this full moon continues the new moon in Leo that began at that time. I personally looked over my journal entry and I was quite blown away by what was there at that time and how the story has continued to this point in time. There was a seed planted, and that seed is really coming to a culmination of some kind, but something now needs to be adjusted or changed or redirected. There's a culminating energy, but there's also a need for adjustment. So we want to be really mindful of our limitations, understanding that we're flawed and fallible, and it's okay. It doesn't make us bad, but it means that we need to be mindful of how we might need to prepare ourselves better, to support ourselves better, to be humble, to trust in the process when things kind of break down. Leo full moon is also speaking about the need for self-confidence. So there's this really important balance that we're being asked to make here about trusting ourselves and trusting our power. That also comes in with Venus conjunct Pluto. Both of those planets refer to self-assurance and a sense of power within ourselves, especially when it comes to what we truly feel in our heart. Again, Leo represents the heart. So this need for self-confidence and to trust ourselves, but not to overstate it. It's a really interesting time of balancing. The other thing that's happening with the Venus conjunct Pluto dynamic is that Venus will go retrograde at the end of December at the exact same degree that these two planets are conjunct now. So this begins a new cycle. Whatever happens for us this week that kind of falls into the themes of Venus conjunct Pluto is probably a story that's going to continue to unfold for the rest of the year and come to some kind of culmination or transition in December. Venus is the goddess of love, of friendship, of beauty, of creativity, of money, wealth, and Pluto is the god of riches, but also of death and trauma and hidden materials and power dynamics and transformation. So when these two meet, the shorthand for this dynamic is that there are powerful potentials to transform a situation through love, through what we love, through what we value. Venus is also what we value. So in terms of our personal relationships, we may experience some fairly intense dynamics in close personal relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, etc. If there are those tensions there, they are really wanting to bring something deep below the surface to the surface in order to be seen, in order for a profound transformation to happen in the area of love and relationships, creativity and abundance as well. That is going to transform the structures of our lives in those areas because they're in Capricorn. There's this need to be very strategic and thorough and motivated in terms of building towards what we love and transforming the parts of our lives that are currently holding us back from being able to do that. There have been a couple of interesting things going on in the world that also seem to be reflecting the dynamics that we're seeing in the sky at the moment. One story that I heard about today was really interesting related to the way in which Redditors had played Wall Street with the GameStop stock market game, basically. Leo is games, it's risks, it's gambling, and they managed to completely inflate the value of the GameStop stocks. That is a computer game. Again, we come back to Leo, one that had been out of fashion for quite some time, and suddenly it's gone through the roof at $100, a piece. I don't really know a lot about stock markets, so forgive my complete ignorance around the language, but that is such a classic thing with, Leo representing games and play and gambling, the Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, which represents markets and the people, the little people winning out over the corporate plutocracy, the Wall Street hedge fund managers. A really amazing kind of revolution. Also with Pluto and Venus in Capricorn, there's this kind of sense of a revolution. The old structures are crumbling and coming down. Pluto destroys things. Venus is about wealth. And so that's a really interesting little way in which we can see some of these themes playing out in the world. Of course, on the other hand, we have had like 3 nights of rioting in the Netherlands, which is people rebelling, Uranus, violently, Mars, against authority, Saturn, in relation to coronavirus restrictions. So these kinds of things are all playing into this dynamic. On the 31st of January, Mercury goes retrograde, and it's going to remain retrograde until the 21st of February. If you have already been noticing technological glitches and stuff-ups, vehicle problems, communication issues, data-related problems, that is something that we may experience more of during the Mercury retrograde. Of course, in terms of inoculating ourselves from the most intense frustrations, and of course the Moon and Mercury, their influence is felt more powerfully in our lives. It's why people are so afraid of Mercury retrogrades, because Mercury is so close to us. It exerts a very obvious and noticeable influence on us. The Moon does as well. With Mercury going retrograde, there's always a workaround in terms of being able to prevent the most kind of disruptive stuff from overtaking us. And that is to work with the power of the planet. What is that planet really good at doing? If we focus our attention on those kinds of activities or energies, the Mercury retrograde is wonderful. I love Mercury retrogrades personally. And so I understood how to work with them, and that is to kind of go in a little bit to reflect, review, revise, reimagine, rework, rest, relax. All the re words are retrograde words. So in terms of Mercury, being in Aquarius, it's wanting to communicate ideas that are going to allow us to build a new thing that is going to be better for everyone than the thing we had before. However, we're at a point now where Mercury wants us to step back a bit and to look at the plans we've made, to look at the ideas and to our strategies and say, is that really going to work so well? Like, how could I revise this? How could I reimagine this or reinvent it? How could I reinvigorate this? Maybe it's an old idea. Mercury loves ideas, loves information, communication, technology, anything that might need to be redone in some way in order to improve it. Mercury helps us to do that. Also on Sunday, we have the Moon in Virgo, and Virgo again is about improvements, small, continual adjustments and improvements that enhance the running and the working of whatever Virgo is focusing its attention on. Those similar energies of wanting to review and revise and also just to improve is emphasized in that Moon. But the Moon is also making a yod or a finger of God with Chiron and Saturn. So that suggests that the improvements that we're looking at, the adjustments and the reflections, are relating to something in our lives that is connected to some wounding, and a wounding that we've learned a lot from, that we're able to teach from. The yod has these aspects that we're a little bit confused about, we don't know quite how to act on, and yet the base of the yod, it's a triangle with 2 quincunxes, the Moon at the apex, and the quincunx, this awkward and uncomfortable and confusing aspect to Chiron, the planet, the healer, the wounded healer and the teacher, and then Saturn, the god of discipline, maturity, obstacles, surmountable obstacles and limitations that kind of force us to grow up and to build better. So with Chiron and Saturn at the bottom of the triangle making a sextile, it means that there's a really productive and beautiful aspect that those two planets are making. So it's quite a mystical aspect. So there's this powerful opportunity on that day to perhaps heal something and to work through some challenges and obstacles in order to have an amazing and beautiful experience. Yods can produce wonderful outcomes. They're also manifesting aspects. We also have the moon trining Uranus and Mars. So she is giving a little bit of a gentle calmative to those two volatile planets down there wanting to rebel and react. So that's going to be an interesting day, Sunday. Now, Monday, the 1st of February 2021 is a whopper. I think many of us are expecting it. We have, many of us have lots of things going on the 1st of February which could go wrong and quite possibly will. We have the moon still in Virgo. He is making a grand cross with Neptune, the planet of confusion, illusions, fantasy, and then the nodes which represent what we need to resolve from the past, the mistakes we've made in the past, the experiences that have led us to certain places that we now need to resolve, and then our destiny, where we're being asked to go in this life, where our heart is leading us to evolve. So this is really powerful dynamic between this moon, which is a little bit critical, and aware of what's not exactly working, at the same time being quite confused by like what's really going on here. I can't really tell, I'm confused. And then squaring the two nodes, like what we're trying to resolve and what we're trying to grow towards. So this is also a very powerful energy. At the same time, on the 1st of Feb, we have a Hammer of Thor aspect, which is a really difficult aspect. And that one is also, the moon is at the apex of that Hammer of Thor, and it's another triangular aspect, but this time the base of the triangle is connected by a square, and the two long legs of this aspect are sesqui-squares, and sesqui-squares are very challenging, subtle aspects that can be quite difficult to really see clearly in ourselves, and so they tend to manifest in external situations. So we could experience some disruption, particularly with technology, because Uranus is one of the legs, the base of that square aspect. One side is Uranus 6 and the other side is Saturn 5. So this tension between the restrictions, the limitations, the obstacles, the do it right and do it in a conservative way but build towards the future, and then Uranus just wanting to, rebel and disrupt and explode and impulsively shift and change. Again, hammers of Thor are really difficult aspects, but they're very powerful manifesting aspects. So through the challenges that we may experience on February the 1st, we could establish some new and very rich opportunity for dealing with the things that we find ourselves dealing with on that day. On the 2nd of Feb, we have Venus moving into Aquarius, finally out of Capricorn and adding to that growing enormous stellium in Aquarius. And she is going to be trining the new moon in Libra. That's a beautiful energy. So after this quite intense day on Monday the 1st, we may experience a really noticeable feeling of relief on the 2nd of Feb. She's trining Venus and she's trining Saturn and she's trining Jupiter. So she is really lending a beautiful energy to all of those planets. Libra is the planet of balance and diplomacy and fairness and friendship. And so she's kind of settling some of that disruptive energy that Saturn and Jupiter have been exerting in their square to Mars and Uranus. On Thursday, we have the moon still in Libra making a grand trine with the North Node, which is our destiny, what we are trying to evolve towards, and the Sun. And the Sun is our conscious growth as well as our ego identifications. We also have Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith at 13 degrees. And that is, it's continuing this theme that I mentioned earlier on around the full moon, where we may experience these feelings of being unworthy or of being not fitting in, feeling criticized, and Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith is really on one hand could create a very volatile energy where we see in the world some kind of violent reaction to situations where people feel like outsiders, or they feel like they're outcast, or they're being demonized. In our own lives, we want to be looking for the feelings that come up that make us feel similarly like outsiders, like we don't belong. With Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith, we're wanting to be taking action that enhances our right to be who we are. This feeling of a justice, a sense of inclusiveness, to include the people who have been kind of left out in the cold. That's also a signature of the Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith. Mars as the warrior who defends those who are less powerful than himself. And Black Moon Lilith has been treated as an outcast because she refused to go along with a situation in which she was being treated like less than. Where is the part of us that feels outcast, that feels demonized? And it may be coming purely from ourselves, that we think that we're wrong, that we're not good enough, that we don't fit in. Mars is what we desire, it's what we want, it's how we take action, it is the self. So it's this fortification of the self, following on from that full moon energy, which is also focusing our attention on our heart, what is true to us in our hearts, and to trusting ourselves. So that theme continues. We also have the Sun square Mars on the 3rd of Feb. So, the 3rd is a more intense day again, after that kind of more quiet Venusian lunar day on the 2nd. With the Sun square Mars, again, that's kind of illuminating Martian aspects, bringing a sense of consciousness to the place in which we feel frustrated or angry, or where we really desire to make something happen. Pay attention to what happens for you around these days. I do highly recommend journaling. Anything that's significant that happens to you, write it down and note the date. On the 4th of Feb, we have another big day. We have the moon in Scorpio taking us deep down into the depths. Scorpio is a really deep feeling place, and it can also relate to traumas and triggers. It can make us obsessive, and it is making another hammer of Thor aspect. In fact, it's making 2 hammers of Thor aspects. Those really difficult triangular patterns I was talking about before, with a square aspect at their base. So usually what comes up with hammer of Thor aspects are situations that we have already been dealing with, like an old story that we already know and have been working with and challenged by in the past, which is why it's a difficult aspect. It's well known to us. And the 2 different ones are creating different kind of opportunities and potentials for expressing that energy. With the moon in Scorpio at the apex, and the apex is the sensitive point. That means that our emotions, our deep emotions, are going to be triggered, and the 2 planets at the base squaring, wanting to create something new out of a tension that feels really difficult, is the North Node and Neptune. So this creative, visionary potential to reach a higher state of consciousness in relation to understanding our destiny and understanding how our emotions are actually pointing the way to our destiny and to what we need to do. Listening to our deep feeling, talking through, working with our deep feelings, whether it's through journaling or reflection or conversation. The second hammer of Thor has the North Node at its apex. So the sensitive point is our destiny, what we're meant to be doing here. And the base is Venus, wanting to be creative, wanting to be diplomatic, wanting to express love and connection in relationship. And the moon in Scorpio also wanting to go deep. If we can be creative, if we can really keep our mind on, that's my mysterious planetary hours that just randomly once in a while these days emerges to tell me what planetary hour it is. We're in the hour of Mars. And the Sesky square hammer of Thor with the square at the base is a Mars related aspect. It's difficult, it's tense, it can involve conflict, but it is manifesting. Mars wants to take action, it wants to make things happen, it wants to move forward. But these aspects are very emotional. It wants us to go deep. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. So it's this need to take action, to go deep down into our psyches in order to understand something, illuminate it so that we can follow our destiny really powerfully and create something amazing, which is Neptune. with the North Node at its point, so that point of where we're trying to evolve to is in Gemini, which deals with being able to appreciate all of the information, all of the facts, all of the elements of the story, which is comprised of many parts, not falling into the trap of going, this is the truth and this is the only thing that's happening. Being aware that the situation is really complex and all of the parts are really rich and important, and not being judgmental that this is better than this or more important than this. This dynamic is also creating a tension between what value we give to the things we're trying to build and contribute to in society. This is a really powerful week, and it's one that's going to ask us to work really, really hard. Many of us are already feeling quite exhausted from all the work we've been doing. That could well continue next week. There's a feeling of being overwhelmed. There is a need to take time for ourselves. Leo wants us to be true to our hearts, to take the time to play, to enjoy. It's this beautiful childlike energy in Leo, doing things that brought us joy and delight when we were children, being creative. It is also a week when we could feel some challenging emotions in relationships or within ourselves, in our relationship to our own power, in relationship to our experiences in the past which may have been painful, a regeneration of a situation that may have been stagnating to some degree. Because of all this energy in the fixed signs, there has been and continues to be a reluctance to change, and yet the solution to the stagnation we may be feeling is to change. And if we don't make those changes ourselves, that Uranus-Mars dynamic could definitely throw some little things, some little spanners in the works. We are also being challenged to consider what we believe about the situations that are happening in our lives. We have the opportunity to be really creative, to see things more clearly, to illuminate the areas in our life that we perhaps need to give more attention to in order to do the best work in the world that we're being asked to do. With so much energy in Aquarius asking us to serve the world, it's really, really important that we listen to what we really need so that we can do that work well, and so that it's work that we love and work that we are going to be able to do to the best of our ability. The moon is leading us right through this week, and Venus is making beautiful and powerful aspects, so she is helping us. Jupiter is also, you know, exerting this kind of benefic force on the situation. So even though it's going to be a challenging week, and it's going to continue to grow, as I've mentioned, because the first exact Saturn-Uranus square happens on the 18th of February, so we're leading up to that slowly but surely. The big work of 2021. Or we'll see exactly what is on the workbench, and it will continue to unfold throughout the year. Pay attention to what happened for you on the 18th, 20th, around that week of August 2020. If you have written any notes, it'll be really interesting to see what was happening in your life and how the story of your life now is continuing that theme. The same way, whatever is coming up for you in relationships, in relation to money, in relation to, you know, things that are being illuminated that were perhaps hidden previously, in friendships, relationships, love, creativity, etc. Pay attention to those things and write them down as well with the date, because we will see how those things evolve by the end of 2021. There's some really powerful cycles underway at the moment. Make sure you take time for yourself. Be patient and reflective in relation to all mercurial things. Much love, beautiful friends. I hope that some of this may have been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you next week and seeing how things continue to evolve. We are living in very interesting times. Much, much love to you all.